When my wife Lola had already checked out of our marriage some years ago, I wanted the same answer you want during separation. I'm sure you're here because you're going through a bad situation and you want reconciliation as soon as possible. You wonder how long is it going to last, right? The separation. And the short answer is that most successful reconciliations happen within 6 to 24 months of a separation. But that's, obviously provided there's some work that's actually being done in the foundation to actually build something meaningful, right? But also, I found advice telling me to disappear for 21 days, 30 days, even 6 weeks. And underneath all of those promise, you know, wait long enough and something should happen, something magical, just because you stayed away, right? Okay. Yeah, right. But anyway, years later, Lola and I were working with a client whose relationship had become painfully uncertain. As you know, one of the basic human needs is certainty, right? Another word for security, safety, just because the opposite of that is insecurity. Anyway, her relationship had become painfully uncertain. Intimacy had been gone for months, and communication was much more inconsistent than ever before. Major life decisions were getting closer at the same time, and she needed to know whether she was waiting for reconciliation or waiting for the end. The problem in both situations, our situation and her situation, was not simply the amount of time that had passed. It wasn't that, okay? It's what we call a timeline panic cycle. The timeline panic cycle. And we're going to spend some time unpacking this cycle today, right? And what it looks like is uncertainty, right? It's triggered. This particular cycle is triggered by uncertainty, usually leading you to a place where you feel the need to counting. Okay, let's just call it counting, right? And then whatever you're getting from your counting will basically dictate your interpretation. Hold on 1 second. This will dictate your interpretation. Let's see, what did I do? Okay, here we go. Let's use this guy. Okay, there you go. All right, because at the end of the day, you're interpretation. There you go. At the end of the day, you're interpreting all these life events, right? But you're also going to make your interpretations off of what you know, or your skill set, your mindset, right? Well, the interpretation you would tend to come up with here will lead you into chasing and begging. So, as you can see, that is being motivated by the fear and uncertainty. Chasing and begging. Chasing. They just put chasing. All right. And chasing in this respect is being motivated by fear, right? And if you keep chasing, right, what happens, right? That creates pressure on the other side, right? Not attraction. It doesn't create attraction. It creates pressure, right? So if the other person is feeling pressured by your activities does not equal to result. They're just exactly that. Just a bunch of activities that's creating pressure that would create even more withdrawal. Ouch. Not good, right? Withdrawal. That doesn't sound good, right? Exactly. So, and guess what? With withdrawal. So now the other person, they're feeling pressure, they're running away from you, and that creates even more uncertainty. So you end up in this very, very bad cycle that keeps repeating itself, that keeps breaking damages, breaking the trust and creating more damages, I wanted to say. And that's what I want to spend some time on today. Okay. And if you're brand new here, Welcome back. Welcome back. And before we dive into unpacking the cycle, if your marriage is in a crisis state right now and you cannot afford to wait for the breakdown of this piece by piece, just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. Book a one-on-one discovery session with me so we can map out your exact scenario privately. All right. The URL is scrolling on the screen. Is getmymarriageback.com/discovery. The first thing you need to understand about the average length of separation before reconciliation is that your mind does not really want an average. Let's be honest, okay? It wants certainty. Just like any other normal human being, you're trying to secure security itself. You're insecure about the state of your marriage at this point in time. You want a number that tells you whether your marriage is still alive, and that is how the timeline panic actually, that's how it starts. All right, so we're going to spend some time unpacking all the elements you're looking at in front of you. Again, is triggered by uncertainty. Okay, it's not the average that you're looking for. I already gave you the average, it's 6 to 24 months anyway, but there's more to that conversation. How do I know? Because I've been through it, because we have a ton of clients that have been through that kind of uncertainty as well. So let's get into it. So the first one, uncertainty, right? In fact, I want to break this down as about 5 traps. Yes. Okay, that you end up in that continue to feed this cycle. And the first trap is to treat the average like a deadline. What happens that, okay, I give you the average, 6 to 21 months, all right, 6 to 24 months, right? All right. So what happens is that you start treating that. The number one mistake you can make right now is to start treating that like, let me put that here, guys. Treating the average like a deadline. Okay, here we go. Treating the average like a deadline. That's the number one mistake you can make right now. So you start counting, right? You start counting. Because again, that's the reason why you're searching for this number, right? So you can start counting down. You put all your energy into counting that. You hear that some couples, because I'm going to tell you, some people will actually reconcile in weeks. Some people will reconcile 5 years after the divorce, right? So when we say something is average, that could mean so many things, right? Some people after a few months, some people much longer, some people no chance in hell, right? So average it's not really a real number, right? It's just, collect a few samples here and there. They do a little bit of study, research, a sample of 1,000 couples or so, and they come up with a number. The number is real, but it's just an average across. It's a cross-sectional average from a group of people that you have no idea. Their story is different. And you're going to turn this information into a clock. And we've been separated for 3 months. It should be time, right? Is that bad? It's been 6 months. Is that bad? Am I running out of time, right? You start counting, right? The calendar becomes the verdict. The longer you wait, the more frustrated you become, the more you move or act from a place of fear, right? In fact, in my own crisis, I found formulas built around 21 days no contact, 30 days, 6 weeks of no contact rule. Yeah, it was called no contact rule. Imagine, right? And what bothered me was not simply the number, it was the expectation attached to the number. And there are two things. If two things would destroy your chances ever, it's pride, number one, and it's mismanaged expectations. Because you're a human being. Of course, you have expectations. I expect that you have expectations. But if it's mismanaged, when I say mismanaged, I'm talking about, like a lot of that is just not knowing what the variables are, right? So, if the date arrives, what if we're now at 6 months? What happens, right? And your spouse is still distant, right? The timeline that you hoped would calm down the situation and finally you reconcile, right? What happens? It creates fear, right? It creates fear, right? So that's the so you're still stuck in uncertainty, right? Even though you've been counting, right? The second trap is turning time into the proof, right? So you're counting down all you want. There's nothing wrong with all you want. You just want to fix your marriage, right? You're turning time into proof, right? You're turning time into proof. That's trap number 2, right? Every passing week, every month that passes, right? That you're still doing this back and forth, that they're still stuck in their decision to find space, find themselves, no sex, just duty and responsibility. Something you wanted so badly because somebody told you marriage was duty and responsibility. It shouldn't be about happiness. And then you found out. It shocked you that you're not the only one involved. Another human being is involved, right? So every week that passes, another quiet weekend, right? And the person, this still seems like they don't care, right? It creates more fear, right? And the uncertainty makes you feel void, right? Now, it's very important that you understand that what I'm describing to you, yes, it's kind of universal, but I've been through it, okay? I've worked with a lot of people that have been through it, okay? And the reality is that it's scientific, okay? It's scientific. It's not this wild thing. You might feel alone right now. You might feel like you're the only one going through it, but that's just your feelings. It's so far from accuracy, right? And that was the danger that I faced when we went through our own crisis years ago. I had no guarantee, right? We're always looking for this guarantee. Now, the thing I want to tell you about guarantees is that losers are always looking for guarantees. Winners, despite no guarantees, they're still going to win because they just learned the game, right? I had no guarantee that she would return, right? And that was what started the winning for me, okay? Just knowing that and accepting that, right? And what did that do? It allowed me to remove that anxiety. It allowed me to remove all of these expectations. It allowed me to focus on what really matters, right? And that's self, which is the only source of sustainability. I'm going to get to that in a second, right? Right. But before that, fear wanted me to turn every unknown feature into something that I can control. Like, this is why people look for guarantees. So how do you know? How do you know? What do you do? Right? All this endless searching for everything to allow you to control external stuff, right? External factors. Whereas the reality is that you have more than enough control in your favor already to create the influence you're looking for, but you can't see that. So what do? You start counting and you start making interpretations from your numbers, right? And that's trap number 2. You're turning time into proof. Trap number 3, you're trying to speed up reconciliation. How do you do that? You start chasing yourself. Wait, I missed. Yeah, it's here. Right? You start chasing yourself. You ever heard of the rat race? You ever heard of there's another phrase that is used for that. Anyway, trap number 3 is trying to speed up the reconciliation. Okay? Trying to speed up. There you go. Whatever you find yourself right now with regards to this separation is exactly what you deserve. No one else is going to tell you that part of the truth. I agree, you desire faster. Okay? I was exactly like you. It's normal for you to want it to happen faster. But the problem with that, again, you're trying to control external factors. You're trying to control rain, sunshine, our sisters, our friends. You're trying to control our environment. How do I know? Well, you hear men sometimes will say things like, well, they start talking to their friends about their problems, and before you know it, they've damaged their marriage. Again, I can hear it. This is an attempt to, it's controlling behavior, okay? It shows up in little subliminal commentaries like that. We know when we hear these things. Not everybody knows. That's why your friends will have terrible advices for you. That's why the internet generally have terrible advices. Okay, so once you decide that the separation is lasting way too long, because I told you a number, because you didn't wait until this point in the video, right? I told you 6 to 24 months, right? Once you decide that it's supposed to last that long, or you started counting back, you're like, you've done enough time, right? Like this is prison sentence or something, right? So you want credit for the time done. What happens? Urgency takes over, right? Now you need to have another conversation about the marriage. Another text message, another long ass frustrated text messages being sent to the person you love that's no longer interested. Another explanation mixed with complanation. I said complanation. another explaining mixed with complaining and defensive behavior and apology at the same time. Confusion, right? Another question about the marriage and where it stands. You're basically begging and chasing. Another attempt to remind your spouse what the stakes are. I said, they're just going to want to sleep with you. Industry, like, yeah, that's exactly probably what they want. They'll rather do that than be with you. That's the reality of what you're facing, but you're struggling in denial, right? What am I saying here? Listen, I'm going to give you a better roadmap, okay? But this is what you're going through right now. This is why it's getting worse and worse, all right? Why? Because this path is driven by fear. That's why you're chasing. That's why we call this fear-driven chasing, and it's not the same thing as pursue. Like, I just buy some gift, do better, help her more around the house, right? That's what she asks for, and that's what you think she needs, right? You're forgetting that she was also a culprit in that situation, because if she knew what she was doing, she wouldn't end up in a situation with you, right? So, and that's the problem here. Chasing is not a good thing. Okay, chasing is not a good thing, because what it does, that it makes you look less and less. It makes you look like you don't know what you're doing. It makes you look very weird. You come off needy and clingy, and that kills attraction even further. All right, how? Because you're creating pressure on the other end, because she's trying to run. He or she is trying to run. But yes, I want to help my brothers, but I'm helping everybody, just so you know. Okay, it's the same thing. It's scientific. Okay, the pressure that you're creating, right, is what I will call trap number 4. Right, trap number 4 is basically thinking that more contact will create faster clarity. Like, you want to engage them more. You just want to communicate. They call it communication. So you look for additional contact. So the no contact rule, right, is coming from a good place. It's just that if it's not grounded, it's going to backfire. All right. If it's not grounded, it's going to backfire. But let's talk about it, because there's some truth to it, right? So you think more contact will create clarity. What do I mean by contact? Every engagement, every chance you get to engage a person, the runaway bride or husband, you think that's going to create more clarity. Is the reason why you're writing those long, frustrated texts. You don't know when you cross the line from apology into defensiveness. Because at the end of the day, you're not just the bad person. That's irrelevant, right? You have some resentment. In fact, one of the things you resent right now, like, how dare that person try to remove themselves from a marriage they committed to, right? That's part of the resentments that you have, right? But you're being sneaky about it. You want to be nice so you can get them back, and then you can finally tell them how you truly feel. You want to get them to counseling so you can finally tell them, so the counselor can help you hold them accountable, right? You see, when your real goal is to get an answer about the timeline, right? Every interaction becomes loaded. You start asking questions. Do you still love me? That's like the best case scenario, which is still bad, right? Do you still love me? Are you in love with him? Oh no, that's crazy. Imagine asking such a question, right? Are we getting back together? How much time do you need to forgive me? I've asked you for forgiveness. Like, who do you think you are, that we have to beg the whole family to come and beg you back and forth every time, right? Well, you still want divorce, right? So yeah, that's all of that is creating pressure, even though you have good intentions. I get it. You have good intentions. You're a good person. Unfortunately, for the most part, that's irrelevant, right? Maybe you married the wrong person. Irrelevant. You married exactly who you needed to marry, and that's what happened. Well, maybe you married for the wrong reason. Irrelevant. Okay, you married. That's why it's called commitment. If it was a situation where you can get, remember what I said about guarantees? You're looking for guarantees. That's what makes you have those talking points. Just marry the right person. Just marry a kind person. You're looking for guarantees. There's no such thing. This is a lifelong journey. Okay, you're essentially trying to use today's conversation to force tomorrow's certainty. It's not going to work. You're in the real world. It doesn't matter if you're married or not, or you plan to marry or not. There's going to be uncertainties. It's precisely what creates the need for certainty with human beings. Okay, so the only way out of this is to get some skills. Beef your game up. You need to understand there's 8 billion of us here. There are winners and there are losers. Majority of people are going to be losers. Ouch. I know. So that's why you see that the loser stories are much more on the internet. In addition to the fact that, negative stuff goes viral faster and much more. That's just reality. But the winners don't care about that. They know. They just know that they can win, and it's a winning formula. And yes, it's scientific. But you just have to engage yourself in self-development. But anyway, trap number 5. You're turning no contact into another countdown. Okay? Turning no contact into another countdown. Turning no contact into another countdown. These are the traps. Let me make them the right color. And these are the traps that you must avoid. Easier said than done when you're one of the actors in the story. Much easier said than done, right? So when when chasing or pleading and begging and getting defensive apology, all those things, when they fail, right? What happens? You swing to the extreme opposite side. Because again, you lack game. You just swing to the extreme. There's nothing in between. It's either yes or no. It's either truth or black. Sorry, black or white. It's neither here nor this. All or nothing. So you're basically attempting to live in a cave. Life is not like that, unfortunately. We're social beings. We have need for connection, significance. Oh yeah. Don't be a validation seeking approver. Yes, you shouldn't be. You should have that under control. But the reality is that we all like to feel significant, right? So when that fails, you say, fine, I would disappear for another 30 days so they can miss you, right? Because you've been reading the weird stuff on the internet. But if you're counting every day until your spouse responds, you're still being controlled by the same timeline. Did you realize that? Oh yeah, you're still, it's like people say, the center men, and the only conversations that they have is about men. It's confusion at best. At best, it's confusion, right? You see, in the book, I describe my own period a little bit differently, and my wife described her own a little bit differently, right? Because we have different experiences, right? But for me at the time, I refused to make what you call a rigid deadline. Okay. Because again, once you start counting, right, 6 to 24 months, you make it a rigid deadline, and that becomes your source of peace. And that's a problem. And that's going to make you look like a weirdo even more if you do that. And I knew that immediately, and I stopped counting. Okay, I can't give myself a deadline to work on myself. That's weird. That's what makes you look like a weirdo. Okay. Of course, I had fear normally. Like, I'm a normal human being, right? I had the fear that she could be gone forever because we had the two boys, and one of my major concerns that I always dreamt about making sure that there's a home for my two boys, regardless of what happens, right? And of course, the best case scenario is two-parent household, but that doesn't have to become a deadline for me, because again, nobody's life is perfect. Okay, so I was able to come to that conclusion so I can actually redirect all my energy in working on myself. I know it sounds like a broken record to many people because they don't really understand what's at stake. All right. So instead of making another adult timetable my deadline, it was more so about me and everything else I can control. Right. But what happened before that, I didn't just fall into that. I didn't just fall into that space where I just figured it out. No. I had to go through refinement. Because before that, I also was doing the chasing, and that was creating more withdrawal, right? And that withdrawal basically translated to more uncertainty. Okay, because for every date that passes, right, that's more. It's just like I'm losing trust. She's obviously losing trust because I'm showing up like a weirdo who is just begging, getting defensive, asserting my pride at the same time. Is confusion at best, right? So the message you expected, it never really comes. Okay, at least not in the form that will make you feel wholesome, that will let you have peace of mind. The reality is that when you face this kind of crisis, the source of peace has to still remain self. Okay, at least for the time being, at least until you're able to attract what you deserve or desire. Same thing. Okay, I know you want some motivational stuff, but let's face some reality so you can actually finally fix your broken marriage. Okay, so you can, because again, if you look at this cycle, you're making it worse. Okay, because every form of withdrawal you experience or rejection you experience basically feeds the cycle all over again, starting with pressure. This right here is the climax this is the culprit that continue to feed pressure. It's what once you have this pressure, it just gets worse and worse and worsest and worsest and worsest. Those are not English words for those of you that are looking for an English class, just so you know. All right. So look, what I'm sharing with you now is a universal roadmap, but every marriage has their own unique curveballs, landmines, and shocking, like all kind of stuff, right? Every story is unique, but this is the universal roadmap. So there's one thing to know this stuff. There's another thing when it comes to application. So if you're looking for me to look directly at your specific situation and come up with a plan, just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. The link is also pinned into the description and in the comment section after the show, and simply secure one of the discovery slots available this week. Now, some of you are realizing for the first time that the issue is not how long the reconciliation is supposed to take. You're realizing that for the first time. You are the person making it longer. Yeah, I know you. Yeah, and that's not to say it's your fault. Fault is another irrelevant stuff. That's not to blame you. That's irrelevant. That's not for you to feel guilty. Guilt will poison the process. Okay, that's not the point. The point here, remember, is to empower you. All right, is to empower you so you can finally take control of the situation. And the issue is identify the patterns that's making you destroy the marriage. What about the other person? See how easy it is for you to go back to the other person. You're giving the other person absolute control. First of all, that's not real. Second of all, perception is real. You gotta be careful with that, right? So, but that's easier said than done. That's exactly what we do in the discovery session to help you separate those things. So just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. All right, let's move on forward. So what do we do with all of this situation, guys? Ladies and gentlemen, right? You don't need to pretend that time does not matter. That's not the whole point of this. Separation is real. Divorce can become real if it's not real already. And practical decisions still exist. You still need to make certain decisions. The other person is still making decisions. But your power is not in finding the perfect number of weeks. Okay? That's not where your power is. Okay? You don't need to set up countdown for yourself in the form of perfect number of weeks of reconciliation. That unfortunately becomes deadline. Your power is in what you become and how you show up while the outcome remains uncertain. Real in life, there will be uncertainty, right? So the roadmap is going to be still triggered by what we call uncertainty, right? Uncertainty in real life. This is real, the real world, right? So you have uncertainty, right? This is just reality, uncertainty, right? This is the real world, and sometimes we're just not sure what the future holds, right? So if you recall, right, over here from uncertainty, you start to do counting. You start counting, which creates that bad deadline, right? Counting. So we're not going to go in that direction anymore, right? We're going to go in this direction. We're going to go towards grounding. Oh, actually rhymes. Grounding. Okay, grounding. We're going to go in the direction of grounding. Okay, this is the beginning of the rest of your life. The same uncertainty, yes, can happen, will happen. It's a for sure will happen, right? The truth is that you don't know exactly how long this separation will last for your story, right? The other truth is that once we navigate this path together in the next few minutes, just give me 5 more minutes, right? It's not going to matter how long, okay? And the fact that it doesn't matter makes it, in reality, potentially shorter, right? So grounding does not replace the uncertainty with fake confidence. We need real confidence, because confidence is sexy, right? But you're not just going to assert fake, fluffy confidence. That's not going to work. This is what people do with the common no contact rule, 30 days no contact rule. You got to be careful with giving yourself deadlines, okay? Because the other person, oftentimes, I don't know if you've tried it, they're probably not biting. So you need to return to gratitude. G. The grounding is the first core pillar in our 3 core pillar framework, right? So we have GPS, right? The G stands for grounding, and it also stands for gratitude. You return back to gratitude. Just knowing that you know that you are more than enough. Okay, that is not no motivational speech. That's actually the reality, because if you weren't more than enough, they wouldn't marry you in the first place. Okay, now life happens. Okay, people end up in the mud, right? Because they don't have the skills. Because all of us that go to that altar to say I do, we didn't know what we're doing. That's the reality. Okay, every single one of us. Okay, because if you did, you probably wouldn't do it. Okay, that's why you see some people trying to come up with the fake guarantees, like never marry because nobody benefits. You see, the female will say only men benefit from marriage. The male will say only female benefit. They're just people that have just seen trouble. Okay, these are troubled people. The reality is that majority of us, if we knew what's standing ahead, just life, will probably stop the whole process. And what do people do? They get obsessed with they go to tarot readers, they go to prophets, they're like trying to seek the future. They're looking for guarantees, which is basically a way to lose your life. Okay, you basically lose out. You're basically a loser once you start those kind of activities. But anyway, Winners are okay with the uncertainty of life because that's actually what makes them stronger. That's how you build some muscles. So you return back to gratitude, you return back to your faith. This is always a move of faith. That doesn't mean you're not in control. It means you control what you can control, and then the rest of it you leave that in the hands of prayer, which is why prayer without work is dead. So now the work is you work on the things you can control, which starts with self. Okay, and that's what we're going through right now. You get back to your higher self. You get whatever that looks like in your world, your God, your faith, your religion, whatever that looks, as long as it's centered around you and not this morality stuff where you're trying to hold other people accountable, which takes away from the attention that you need on yourself. Anyway, that's that. From grounding, we go in the direction of purpose. Let's put that over here. Purpose. Purpose. What do we mean by purpose? Well, grounding helps you to start living a life of purpose. Probably for the first time in your life. Purpose does not exist without pain. Okay? Because you don't know why you should build purpose. You just live just because, just like children, you just live just because it's life, right? But when you start becoming an adult, you start realizing that, wait, right? It's the same thing like when you start falling, right? Suddenly, if God forbid something happens to your walking capabilities, you have to go to therapy. Same thing, right? Because now you know pain. Now you have the fear of falling. You know what it feels like to fall, right? So it's going to take some work to suddenly start becoming a person living your life mission and your purpose. It's very important that you re-engage this. If you've ever engaged in the past, you probably haven't engaged in the past, most likely not, right? But for the first time, if you find yourself where your marriage is shutting down, it makes you question everything you've ever believed, right? It makes you question your own identity. How do I know? Because you lose yourself, right? Everything about you becomes about the marriage, and that right there is one of the culprits. It's one of the things that's destroying your chances. It's the reason why you're looking for what the average length of reconciliation would be, right? It's because you're obsessed. Because rejection breeds obsession. It's not just you, it happens to the best of us. And that's the good news, okay? So now you have an opportunity. All of this, that uncertainty, every uncertainty you go through in life, it's an opportunity. It's a challenge to your soul. It's a challenge, an opportunity for you to build yourself, to become a better version of yourself, right? As opposed to getting into a place where you start creating deadline for yourself using other people's lives timetable. Why did I say, why are you calling my wife other people? I know, because you're supposed to become one. Now you tell me that your experience at this moment feels like you're one. I think that's a question that needs to be answered in front of a mirror. Okay, so now the separation, that separation period, as soon as you engage your purpose, that separation period stops being nothing but just waiting time. And it's not you waiting, it's just process. It's more like a processing time. Okay, and in my own story, I described that season as a me moment, focused on personal purpose, mission, my self-development, rather than sitting around and expecting my wife Lola to basically control my schedule. Okay, I took charge, right? Started paying attention to my health, right? My children, right? Because they've always mattered, and sometimes we use that as an excuse to stay in a funky relationship. But no, they were my excuses to work on myself. All right. Now I took my career a little bit more seriously. I cleaned out house. I got rid of heavy excess weight. I didn't really appreciate this until probably a couple of years later, but I got rid of a lot of stuff, like just a lot of noise in the form of space, matter, materialistic things, unnecessary. I got rid of people that were in my team that were just heavy dead weight. It was the beginning of the rest of my life. You probably need to do things like that. See, instead of putting all your energy on forcing that person, there's a lot of other stuff underneath that's creating your reality. And it's about doing a root cause analysis to find out what those things are and getting rid of them. And that will start boosting your confidence, right? It means refusing to put the rest of your life in a waiting room that is being controlled by another human being. You're giving that other human being the permission to be human in their own right, as opposed to, you know, anyway, you get the gist, right? So from a place of purpose, you start discovering self. So now we have self-discovery. Self-discovery is impossible when you pretend that you're living in a cave. I'm just gonna be by myself, so I can avoid life troubles. Right? Self-discovery. Self-discovery is much more grounded when you've gone through some things in life, guys. Okay, because a lot of you have gone through stuff and you're advising younger people to discover themselves first before they get into stuff. I don't know if you realize how damaging such advices are. You got to be careful with such advice, because honestly, it's unrealistic. Can you really discover yourself if you haven't gone through life? That's the question, right? Can you? Well, you can know what you like. You can know do you really know what you like until you've experienced what you don't like? It's just a question, But anyway, the best form of self-discovery comes from pain. Go and look at anybody that's successful with anything in life. Leave marriage outside of it for a second, right? They have gone through stuff. Okay, it might look like overnight success on the surface, but that's usually coming from the lame mindset of a person that haven't really done the work. Self-discovery is much more accurate in this space because you've gone through stuff. You have a frame of reference. Okay, you're actually discovering yourself because you've been put through the test, right? And you survived it, because if you didn't survive it, you wouldn't be on this video, right? How long? Until your spouse comes back again. You change that question to, what is this separation showing me about myself? This separation is showing you something, is revealing so much more about yourself. No, not about the other person. It's not about how evil the other person is or how narcissistic the other person has been, right? Okay, we get it. So self-discovery, what that leads to, it leads to value beyond just moral values. Okay, you build real value probably for the first time in your life. The only thing you had before was you're a good person. So you thought you deserved a good person, a good marriage. Well, no, you're building experiential value now. Value meaning it's not just you that see it. You have to see it first, of course. But it's not just you seeing it. It's not like, I know my worth, I know my value. No, other people can see it. So, of course, they want to be a part of your party. So now other people can see this form of value, and that creates, not just other people, the person that's trying to run away start to see it too, right? So now they become curious. Curiosity and attraction, they come together. They start to wonder what you're up to. Whoever is wondering what the other person is up to is attracted. See, remember, you were the one that was obsessed over the other side. Now they start to get curious, because anything that's readily available will be taken for granted. That's another life principle that you probably should know already. You probably paying attention to it for the first time. Yes, the same thing is applicable in your broken marriage. They have seen you finish. They're taking you for granted. Yes, you offended them, and that's a big deal, and you should take full ownership of that. Yes, but they're not just with you because you're a perfect person. That's not why. They're with you because they saw value in you in the first place. You understand? So now the oxymoron of all of this is that once you disappoint them, or you betrayed them, or you fall short of what the expectations are, then you living together, you see each other all the time. Remember, more contact does not equal to clarity. Now they start to fantasize about what does it feel like on the other side. It's because they're taking you for granted. But now you've taken some time to take care of yourself. You can't take time away just for the sake of taking time away. That will backfire. That's fluffy. That's empty. They can see through you. But when you take the time to actually work on yourself, you create value that not just you can see, because confidence is sexy. They can see it, and now they get curious, and then attraction start to build back up again, right? And it doesn't mean that uncertainty will erase out of life. You just know what to do with uncertainty than operating from a place of fear. You know how to go back to a place of grounding. And the more you are able to navigate this cycle successfully over and over, right? The more you are able to navigate this cycle successfully over and over, you build trust. The other, you stop waiting for them to trust you. You naturally build trust. And that trust leads into safety. They feel safe around you, right? Because you no longer need them to be yourself. Okay? And that builds security. At the end of the day, everybody just want to be in a safe place. The street loves nobody. The street has no love, right? Everybody just want to be in a safe place. They want to feel secure about the present, about the future. And they want that to basically erase the past. It's not going to erase the past, but you can create new experiences that makes the past feels minutiae compared to the present and the way they think about the future, which is what we're talking about, trust. The more you're able to navigate this cycle from uncertainty to curiosity and attraction, the more you do that over and over, it becomes second nature, not just for you, but also your other partner. There's nothing in the street that can be comparable to you. I hope that makes sense. So before we wrap up, okay, just stare at the cycle you're looking at. That's what you're trying to create. Now, the reality is that you probably saw yourself in this lesson today. Clap for yourself. You find yourself thinking, yes, I'm talking about your marriage. Yes, I am. And every marriage is still different. Every marriage is unique. Every relationship has their own history, has their own personalities and blind spot. And that's why I offer a private 101 1-hour discovery session, which we will spend 1 hour together to look at your specific situation. All right. And you can find that easily at just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. That's getmymarriageback.com/discovery. It's also pinned into the description box. All right. And what will happen is I will spend 1 hour with you to identify the actual happenings in your relationship, okay, the underlying relationship, so it can help you gain clarity for what the next best steps are. Okay. All right. So the average length of separation before reconciliation can give you context, I guess. Yes, to some extent, but it cannot give you a verdict about your marriage. Okay. Unfortunately, that's what most people translate it to. Now, a longer separation does not give you the permission to panic, to chase, to turn every interaction into a demand for clarity. You have to be careful with that. Giving space is not the same thing as running a 30-day no contact experiment. You got to be careful with those things. Okay. If you're counting days for a reaction, your peace is still attached to your partner's behavior or your estranged partner's behavior. Now, saving your marriage while separated does not require putting your life on hold. In fact, that works against it. It's very important when we talk about purpose, right? When we talk about grounding, purpose, self, those are the three core pillars, GPS, right? Self-discovery and value are available to you immediately, like right now, right? You don't have to wait for another human being to create those things. But again, there's a processing time with anything that's worthwhile in life. There's a processing time, not necessarily a waiting time. You got to be careful with waiting for another human being before you can live. And also, it's easier said than done, because the reality is that you cannot control how long reconciliation takes or guarantee that it will happen, right? But you can guarantee getting in the process starting now. And it's also scientific that there's nothing better in the street. If there was something better in the street, that person would be with them already. All right. And that is not because I'm talking to you that you want to save the marriage. I'm not talking to the other person. They can decide what they want to do with their own life. Same thing. You see, fairness. You're looking for fairness. You start with you. Just look in the mirror and say, what's fair for me as an individual? And you do what's best for you. Right. You take care of yourself for me. I take care of myself for you. That's the formula that needs to keep ringing in your head. Okay, so if today's lesson helped you, I'd appreciate if you would like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. I'll see you on the next video. You can see it's probably pinned somewhere around this corner somewhere. Check it out. And if you're looking for me, you want me, just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. Take care. God bless. Peace.
Are you fighting to save a marriage or a relationship, or simply avoiding to end up in a broken or toxic one?
We've been there and you're in the right place. You see, inside this book, right, you will find and you will discover the secret to save a broken marriage, and you will learn how to build and attract the marriage of your dream.